Welcome, dear listener, to a gentle voyage through the whispers of the past. Have you ever wondered what turned the most joyous days of old into a whirlwind of chaos beyond control? Close your eyes now and let the soft howl of the wind sweeping across the desolate fields of medieval Europe lull you into a dream. Before you stands a humble wooden cottage, its walls crafted from mud-caked wattle and woven branches, its thatched roof sagging under the pale moonlight. Inside, the flicker of a hearth fire casts a warm yet harsh glow, illuminating the pale, anxious faces of those preparing for a momentous day, a wedding. But this is no scene of laughter or flowing gowns. Instead, there's a restless unease, a creeping fear, and an air so heavy it feels as though fate itself lurks in the shadows. Are you ready to uncover why medieval weddings spiraled into such wild disorder? If not, you might miss the buried secrets, the forgotten pains, and the fierce yearnings hidden within those ancient rites. Are you ready to imagine yourself living in the year 1325, deep in the heart of medieval Europe, where life unfolds as an endless struggle against biting cold, mud-drenched fields and the ever-present shadow of death? The world outside your door is a tapestry of hardship, woven with threads of survival that would test even the strongest souls today. The air carries the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, mingling with the faint tang of unwashed wool from the villagers trudging through their daily toil. Each morning begins with the creak of a wooden plow cutting through frozen soil, the groan of oxen straining under their yokes, and the distant wail of a child hungry for warmth. This is no place for the faint-hearted. Disease lurks in every corner, from the plague-ridden rats scurrying through the straw to the coughs that echo in the night, a reminder that life hangs by the thinnest of threads. In this harsh landscape, love and marriage were not the romantic tales spun by modern minstrels. For the common folk, a wedding was less a celebration of union and more a desperate pact for survival. Picture a young man, let's call him Thomas, a broad-shouldered farmer with calloused hands and eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. At 23, he stands in the dim light of his family's hovel, his heart pounding not with joy but with dread. Beside him is Agnes, a girl of 19, with a face pale from years of labor, her thin frame wrapped in a patched woolen dress that once belonged to her mother. Their betrothal was not born of tender glances or whispered promises, but of necessity. Her family's land bordered his, and their union would merge their meager holdings into something that might just keep them alive through the next winter. Yet as the wedding day approaches, the weight of tradition presses down like a storm cloud, threatening to unravel everything. The chaos begins with the preparations, a ritual so fraught with uncertainty that it could drive even the steadiest mind to the edge. In medieval villages, there were no florists or caterers to ease the burden. Instead, families scrambled to gather what little they had: stale bread, a jug of weak ale, and perhaps a plucked chicken, if the harvest had been kind. The bride's dowry, often a handful of tools or a cow, was inspected with hawk-like scrutiny by the groom's ken, their murmurs of approval or disdain hanging heavy in the air. Thomas's father, a grizzled man with a scar across his cheek, paces the room, muttering about the cow's limp, while Agnes's mother clutches a wooden spoon, her eyes glistening with tears of regret for the daughter she's losing to this uncertain alliance. The fear of scarcity gnaws at them all. Will there be enough to feed the guests, or will this day end in shame? Then comes the church, a squat stone building with walls damp from centuries of neglect, its stained glass windows barely letting in the feeble light. The priest, a gaunt figure in a threadbare robe, stands at the altar, his voice a monotonous drone as he recites Latin phrases neither bride nor groom understands. But the real turmoil erupts outside, where villagers gather not just to witness, but to judge. Weddings were public spectacles, and with them came the risk of scandal. A whisper spreads that Agnes's family once harbored a thief, and suddenly the crowd's murmurs turn to shouts, their fingers pointing, their laughter cutting through the cold air. Thomas feels a knot tighten in his chest. Will this day mark his rise or his ruin? The fear of rejection, of being cast out from the only community he knows, gnaws at his soul, a wound deeper than any physical toil. As the ceremony stumbles forward, another layer of chaos unfolds. Medieval weddings were governed by customs so rigid they bordered on the absurd. The bride and groom were expected to exchange vows in front of witnesses, but illiteracy meant these vows were often misheard or forgotten, leading to disputes that could last generations. Agnes stumbles over her words, her voice trembling as she promises to obey, while Thomas's mind races with the dread that he might have agreed to something he didn't intend. The priest, impatient and weary, waves a hand, but the crowd grows restless, some jeering, others tossing rotten vegetables in a mockery that stings more than it entertains. This is no celebration, it's a trial by fire, where every misstep could shatter their fragile future. And then there's the feast, or what passes for one. The tables groan under the weight of coarse bread and watery stew, a far cry from the feasts of legend. Yet the villagers eat with a fervor born of hunger, their laughter tinged with desperation. But the real danger lies in the ale, brewed hastily and strong enough to dull the senses. As the night deepens, tempers flare. Old grudges resurface, and a brawl breaks out over a spilled mug, fists flying amid the flickering torchlight. Thomas pulls Agnes close, her eyes wide with terror, as the realization sinks in. This chaos is not just a moment, but a reflection of their lives, where survival trumps joy, and every step forward is shadowed by the fear of loss. In this world, weddings were not just unions of hearts, but battles against fate. The longing for acceptance, the ache of a love constrained by necessity, and the terror of a future uncertain, all these emotions swirl together, binding Thomas and Agnes in a bond as fragile as the thatch above their heads. As the fire dies down and the last drunken reveler staggers home, they sit together, hands clasped, staring into the embers. What will tomorrow bring? Will their union withstand the storms ahead, or will it crumble under the weight of medieval chaos? The answer lies buried in the tales yet to unfold, and if you drift away now, you might never know the secrets that shaped their destiny. The embers in the hearth glow faintly now, their warmth barely reaching the cold corners of Thomas and Agnes's small cottage. Outside, the wind howls with a mournful wail, rattling the wooden shutters as if the spirits of the past are eager to join the wedding's aftermath. You're still here, nestled in the heart of medieval Europe in 1325, where the echoes of a chaotic wedding linger in the air like the scent of burnt bread. Thomas sits with his head in his hands, the weight of the day pressing down on his broad shoulders, while Agnes clutches a small wooden cross, her fingers tracing its rough edges as if seeking salvation from the storm that has only just begun. Their union, meant to be a beacon of hope in this unforgiving world, now teeters on the brink of ruin, not because of their lack of love, but because of the unseen forces that govern every moment of a medieval wedding. What could possibly deepen the chaos of a day already so fraught with turmoil? Let's step deeper into the village of shadows, where superstition and tradition weave a tapestry of fear, and where every celebration carries the risk of unraveling into despair. As the embers in the hearth glow faintly now, their warmth barely reaching the cold corners of Thomas and Agnes's small cottage. Outside, the wind howls with a mournful wail, rattling the wooden shutters as if the spirits of the past are eager to join the wedding's aftermath. You're still here, nestled in the heart of medieval Europe in 1325, where the echoes of a chaotic wedding linger in the air like the scent of burnt bread. Thomas sits with his head in his hands, the weight of the day pressing down on his broad shoulders, while Agnes clutches a small wooden cross, her fingers tracing its rough edges as if seeking salvation from the storm that has only just begun. Their union, meant to be a beacon of hope in this unforgiving world, now teeters on the brink of ruin, not because of their lack of love, but because of the unseen forces that govern every moment of a medieval wedding. What could possibly deepen the chaos of a day already so fraught with turmoil? Let's step deeper into the Village of Shadows, where superstition and tradition weave a tapestry of fear, and where every celebration carries the risk of unraveling into despair. The village of Eldermoor, where Thomas and Agnes live, is a cluster of crooked homes huddled together against the endless expanse of fields and forests. By day, it's a place of labor and quiet endurance. Men till the fields, women weave coarse cloth by the light of tallow candles, and children chase chickens through the mud with a desperate kind of joy. But by night, Eldermoor transforms into a realm of whispers and shadows, where every creak of a floorboard or rustle in the underbrush is a sign of something sinister. The villagers are a superstitious lot, their lives governed by beliefs passed down through generations, etched into their minds like the scars of smallpox on their skin. They fear the forest that looms at the village's edge, a dark tangle of ancient oaks said to house spirits who punish those who defy the old ways. And on a wedding day, these fears bubble to the surface like a cauldron left too long over the fire. As dawn breaks on the morning after the wedding, the village is already abuzz with preparations for the second day of celebrations, a tradition meant to solidify the bond between families, but often serving as a stage for further chaos. Thomas rises with a heavy heart, his body aching from the previous night's brawl, his mind replaying the jeers of the crowd and the sting of their mockery. He steps outside, his boots sinking into the frost-crusted mud, and surveys the scene. The village square, a small patch of trampled earth surrounded by homes, is being transformed into a makeshift gathering place. Women carry baskets of turnips and onions, their faces etched with exhaustion, while men drag wooden benches into a rough circle, their breath visible in the frigid air. Agnes joins him, her eyes red from a sleepless night, her hands trembling as she adjusts the faded shawl around her shoulders. She knows what's coming. The rituals of the second day are notorious for their unpredictability, and in a village like Eldermoor, unpredictability often means disaster. The first ritual of the day is the blessing of the hearth, a ceremony meant to ensure the couple's new home is free of evil spirits. Thomas and Agnes stand before their cottage, now officially their shared dwelling, as the village elder, a stooped woman named Edith with a face like weathered parchment, leads the rite. Edith's voice is a low, droning chant, her hands clutching a bundle of dried herbs that she waves through the air, the scent of sage and rosemary mingling with the damp earthiness of the morning. The villagers watch with narrowed eyes, their murmurs a constant undercurrent of suspicion. In medieval times, a wedding wasn't just a union of two people. It was a test of their worthiness in the eyes of the community, and any sign of misfortune was taken as proof of divine disapproval. As Edith circles the cottage, sprinkling salt across the threshold, a sudden gust of wind snatches the herbs from her grasp, sending them tumbling into the mud. A gasp ripples through the crowd, and Edith's eyes widen with a fear so raw it sends a chill down Thomas's spine. "A bad omen," she whispers, her voice trembling, and the villagers erupt into a cacophony of whispers, their fingers pointing at Agnes as if she's the source of this ill fate. The weight of their judgment presses down on Agnes like a millstone, her chest tightening with the fear of rejection. In Eldermoor, being marked as cursed could mean exile or worse. She glances at Thomas, her eyes pleading for reassurance, but he's too consumed by his own dread to offer comfort. The memory of his father's warning echoes in his mind. A cursed union brings death to us all. Thomas's father had seen it happen before, a young couple driven from the village after a failed wedding ritual, only to perish in the forest, their bodies found weeks later, ravaged by wolves, or worse. The fear of such a fate gnaws at Thomas, a primal terror that roots him to the spot, as the villagers' whispers grow louder, their accusations sharper. "She's brought the devil's eye upon us," one woman hisses, clutching her child close, while a man mutters, "The spirits are angry. We should never have let this wedding happen." But the chaos doesn't end with the failed blessing. As the day progresses, the second ritual begins, The Dance of the Bond, a tradition where the couple must lead the village in a ceremonial dance to prove their unity. The villagers form a circle in the square, their hands clasped, their faces a mix of curiosity and malice. A lone fiddler, a gaunt man with a crooked nose, strikes up a mournful tune, the notes wavering in the cold air like a lament for lost hopes. Thomas and Agnes step into the center, their movements stiff and awkward, their hands slick with sweat despite the chill. The dance is meant to be a symbol of harmony, but in Eldermoor, it's a gauntlet. The villagers, emboldened by the earlier omen, begin to heckle, their voices rising over the music. "She's stepping on his toes! Another sign!" a woman shouts, her laughter cruel. "He's no leader! Look how he stumbles!" a man jeers, his voice slurred from too much ale. Thomas feels the sting of their words like lashes across his back, each taunt a reminder of his inadequacy, his longing for acceptance slipping further out of reach. Agnes, meanwhile, fights to hold back tears, her movements growing more frantic as the dance spirals out of control. The fiddler plays faster, his bow scraping across the strings with a ferocity that mirrors the crowd's mounting hysteria. The circle tightens, the villagers pressing closer, their faces twisted with a mix of amusement and menace. Suddenly, a child darts forward, tossing a handful of mud at Agnes's dress, the brown stain spreading across the faded wool like a mark of shame. The crowd roars with laughter, and Agnes stumbles, her foot catching on a loose stone. She falls to her knees, her hands scraping against the frozen ground, and for a moment, the world seems to stop. The music, the laughter, the wind, all swallowed by the weight of her humiliation. Thomas rushes to her side, his heart pounding with a mix of rage and despair, but the damage is done. The dance has failed, and with it, their hope of proving their worth to the village. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the square, the third ritual looms, the offering to the spirits. This is perhaps the most dangerous tradition of all, a relic of pagan beliefs that the church has never fully eradicated. The villagers gather at the edge of the forest, their torches casting an eerie glow against the gnarled trees. Edith leads the procession, her voice rising in a chant that sends shivers down Agnes's spine. The couple is expected to offer a gift to the forest spirits, a woven wreath, a loaf of bread, and a small vial of ale, to ensure their marriage is blessed. But the forest is a place of dread, its depths rumored to house creatures that feast on the souls of the unworthy. Thomas and Agnes walk hand in hand, their steps hesitant, their breath visible in the icy air. The villagers follow at a distance, their eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and anticipation, ready to interpret any misstep as a sign of doom. At the forest's edge, they place their offerings at the foot of an ancient oak, its branches twisted like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. Edith mutters a prayer, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves, and for a moment, all is still. But then a low, guttural howl echoes from the darkness, a sound so primal it sends the villagers scrambling back in terror. "The spirits reject them," someone cries, and panic erupts. Torches are dropped, their flames sputtering in the mud, as the crowd flees, leaving Thomas and Agnes alone at the forest's edge. Agnes clings to Thomas, her body trembling, her mind racing with the fear of what they've unleashed. Thomas pulls her close, his own heart pounding with the terror of the unknown, the longing for a future free of this chaos burning in his chest like a fire that refuses to die. The night stretches on, cold and unforgiving, as Thomas and Agnes make their way back to the village, their steps heavy with the weight of the day's failures. The villagers' rejection, the failed rituals, the howl in the forest, all of it hangs over them like a curse, threatening to unravel the fragile bond they've forged. But beneath the fear, there's a flicker of defiance, a shared resolve to prove that their love can withstand the chaos of Eldermoor.
As they reach their cottage, the first snowflakes of winter begin to fall, blanketing the village in a silence that feels both ominous and strangely comforting. What trials await them tomorrow as the wedding celebrations continue to unravel? The answer lies in the shadows of the days ahead, waiting to whisper its secrets into the night.
The snowflakes drift gently now, settling like a soft shroud over the village of Eldermoor, their delicate touch a stark contrast to the turmoil that lingers in Thomas and Agnes's hearts. Inside their modest cottage, the hearth's embers pulse with a faint dying warmth, casting long shadows that dance across the rough-hewn walls. You're still with them, wrapped in the quiet embrace of medieval Europe in 1325, where the echoes of a wedding turned chaotic reverberate like a drumbeat in the night. Thomas sits by the fire, his broad hands cradling a mug of lukewarm ale, his eyes fixed on the flickering flames as if they might reveal a path through the storm of superstition that threatens to engulf them. Agnes kneels beside him, her fingers still tracing the wooden cross, her breath shallow with the fear that the village's rejection has sealed their fate. The howl from the forest lingers in their minds, a ghostly reminder of the spirits they've offended, and the weight of tradition presses down like a stone upon their fragile union. What unseen forces could turn a simple wedding into a battle for survival? If you turn away now, you might never unravel the mysteries that bind their destiny to the shadows of Eldermoor. The morning after the failed forest offering dawns gray and heavy, the sky a blanket of clouds that seem to mirror the villagers' mood. Eldermoor stirs slowly, the creak of doors and the shuffle of boots muffled by the fresh snow that blankets the ground. Thomas rises, his muscles stiff from the cold, his mind racing with the dread of what the third day of wedding festivities might bring. In medieval times, a wedding spanned multiple days, each ritual a thread in the intricate web of custom that held the community together, or tore it apart. Today is the day of the Feast of Kin, a gathering meant to unite the families of the bride and groom, but in a village steeped in suspicion, it promises to be anything but harmonious. Agnes joins him at the door, her patched dress now stained with mud from the previous night's fall, her eyes reflecting a mix of exhaustion and a quiet, burning resolve. Together they step into the cold, their breath fogging in the air, unaware that this day will test their bond in ways they never imagined. The village square, now dusted with snow, transforms into a makeshift banquet hall, its benches dragged from homes and arranged in a rough semicircle. The air carries the scent of roasting meat, likely a single pig slaughtered for the occasion, mingled with the sour tang of fermenting ale. Women bustle about, their hands red from the cold as they ladle stew into wooden bowls, while men haul barrels of drink, their faces flushed with the anticipation of a rare indulgence. At the center of it all stands Thomas's father, a towering figure with a scar that twists his lip into a perpetual sneer, his voice booming as he calls the families together. Agnes's mother, a frail woman with hands gnarled from years of spinning wool, hovers nearby, her eyes darting nervously as if expecting the ground to swallow them whole. The tension between the families is palpable, a silent feud simmering beneath the surface, fueled by the failed rituals of the previous days. The feast begins with a prayer, led by the village priest, his gaunt frame swaying as he mutters Latin over a crust of bread held aloft like a sacred relic. The villagers bow their heads, but their eyes remain sharp, scanning for any sign of weakness. Thomas and Agnes sit at the head of the table, their hands clasped tightly beneath the rough wood, a fragile shield against the judgment that surrounds them. The first course is served, a thin broth with floating bits of turnip, and the silence is broken by the clatter of spoons against bowls. But the peace is short-lived. As the ale flows, so does the venom. Thomas's uncle, a wiry man with a voice like gravel, rises to his feet, his mug sloshing as he points an accusing finger at Agnes's family. "Your daughter's curse brought the spirit's wrath," he bellows, his words slurring with drink. The crowd gasps, and Agnes's mother lets out a sob, her hands flying to her face as if to hide the shame that burns within her. The accusation ignites a firestorm of chaos. Agnes's brother, a lanky youth with a temper as quick as his fists, leaps up, knocking over his bench as he lunges at Thomas's uncle. Fists fly, ale spills, and the table becomes a battlefield, bowls shattering as the villagers scramble to join or flee the fray.
Thomas pulls Agnes behind him, his heart pounding with a mix of rage and helplessness, the longing to protect her clashing with the fear that he's powerless against the tide of hatred. Agnes clings to him, her body trembling, her mind flooded with the terror of being cast out, her dreams of a stable future crumbling like the bread beneath them. The priest shouts for order, his voice lost in the din, while Edith, the village elder, watches with a grim satisfaction, as if the chaos proves her omen true.
As the brawl subsides, leaving the square littered with broken pottery and bruised egos, the focus shifts to the next ritual, the exchange of tokens. This custom requires the families to present gifts to one another, a symbol of goodwill that often reveals the depth of their grudges. Thomas's father steps forward, his hands trembling as he offers a worn leather pouch containing a handful of silver coins, a rare treasure in Eldermoor. Agnes's mother, her face streaked with tears, presents a small wooden chest, its lid carved with faded runes, containing a single silver brooch that once belonged to her grandmother. The exchange should be a moment of unity, but the villagers' eyes are cold, their whispers sharp. "Is that all?" someone mutters, and the tension snaps like a taut rope. Thomas's father snatches the brooch, inspecting it with a sneer, while Agnes's brother glares, his fists clenched. The fear of inadequacy, the ache of a heritage questioned, gnaws at both families, deepening the rift that threatens to swallow the wedding whole. The afternoon wears on, and the final ritual of the day approaches, the vow of the fields. This is a solemn pledge where the couple must walk to the edge of the village's fields and swear to work the land together, their union blessed by the earth itself. Thomas and Agnes, their spirits battered but unbroken, set out under the watchful eyes of the villagers, their footsteps crunching in the snow. The fields stretch out before them, a vast expanse of white, broken only by the dark lines of furrows, a silent testament to the labor that defines their lives. They reach the boundary stone, a moss-covered marker weathered by centuries, and kneel, their hands joined over its cold surface. Thomas speaks first, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart, promising to till the soil with Agnes by his side. Agnes follows, her words soft but firm, a vow born of necessity but tinged with a fragile hope. But the ritual takes a turn as the wind picks up, carrying with it a strange, keening sound that seems to rise from the earth itself. The villagers freeze, their torches flickering as the sound grows louder, a wail that echoes the forest's howl from the night before. Edith steps forward, her face pale, her voice a whisper of dread. "The land rejects them, the spirits are angry still," she cries, and the crowd surges forward, their fear turning to fury. Thomas pulls Agnes to her feet, his body shielding her as stones and clumps of snow are hurled their way. The longing for acceptance, the terror of exile, burns in his chest, a fire fueled by the knowledge that their love might not be enough to save them. Agnes buries her face in his shoulder, her tears soaking into his tunic, her heart aching with the regret of a future stolen by forces beyond her control. As dusk falls, the villagers retreat, their anger spent but their judgment unyielding. Thomas and Agnes stumble back to their cottage, the weight of the day's failures pressing down like a yoke. The snow continues to fall, blanketing the fields in silence, but within their hearts, a storm rages. The chaos of the wedding has revealed the fragility of their bond, the superstitions that bind the village, and the unseen forces that threaten to tear them apart. Yet, in the flicker of the hearth's dying light, there's a glimmer of resolve, a shared determination to face whatever comes next. What secrets will the next day uncover as the wedding's final rites draw near? The answer waits in the shadows, whispering its tale into the night. The snow has thickened now, falling in heavy, silent sheets that cloak the village of Eldermoor in a ghostly stillness, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Inside the small cottage, the hearth's embers have faded to a dull gray, their warmth a distant memory in the creeping chill of the night. You're still here, nestled in the heart of medieval Europe in 1325, where Thomas and Agnes cling to each other in the dim light, their hands clasped tightly as they brace for the next wave of their wedding's relentless chaos. The echoes of the wail linger in their minds, a haunting reminder of the village's rejection, and the air feels heavy with the weight of traditions that seem designed to tear them apart rather than unite them. Thomas's eyes, shadowed with exhaustion, flicker with a mix of defiance and dread, while Agnes's fingers tremble as she grips her wooden cross, her lips moving in a silent prayer for deliverance. What could possibly deepen the turmoil of a wedding already so steeped in fear and superstition? The answer lies in the rituals yet to come, rituals that will test not just their love, but their very survival in a community divided by mistrust.
Morning arrives with a pale, watery light that struggles to pierce the storm clouds overhead, casting the village in a muted glow that feels more like twilight than dawn. The snow has piled high, blanketing the rooftops and turning the muddy paths into a treacherous mire. But the villagers of Eldermoor are undeterred. Today marks the 4th day of Thomas and Agnes's wedding celebrations, a day known as the Trial of the Feast, where the couple must host a communal meal to prove their worth as providers. In a world where famine is a constant specter, this ritual is both a celebration and a judgment, a chance for the village to feast at the couple's expense while scrutinizing their every move. Thomas rises with a groan, his body aching from the previous day's trials, his mind heavy with the fear that their meager stores will not be enough to satisfy the hungry eyes of Eldermoor. Agnes joins him, her movements slow and deliberate as she adjusts her shawl, the mud stains on her dress a stark reminder of the humiliations they've endured. The village square, now a snow-dusted expanse, is once again the stage for the day's events. Makeshift tables are dragged into place, their surfaces scarred from years of use, while a fire pit is kindled at the center, its flames struggling against the wind that whips through the village like a restless spirit. The scent of burning wood mingles with the faint aroma of boiling oats, a thin porridge that forms the backbone of the feast. Thomas and his father have spent the early hours slaughtering a second pig, a risky sacrifice that leaves their winter stores dangerously low. But even this offering feels insufficient in the face of the village's expectations. Agnes's mother and sisters work tirelessly beside her, their hands raw from the cold as they knead dough for flatbreads, their faces etched with a quiet despair that mirrors her own. The fear of failure hangs over them like a dark cloud. For in Eldermoor, a failed feast is not just a mark of shame, it's a sign that the couple is unfit to lead a household, a verdict that could lead to ostracism. As the villagers gather, their cloaks pulled tight against the biting wind, the mood is one of cautious anticipation, tinged with the lingering suspicion of the past day's omens. Thomas stands at the head of the table, his broad frame a shield against the judgmental stares, while Agnes moves among the guests, ladling porridge into bowls with a trembling hand. The priest, his gaunt face shadowed by his hood, mutters a blessing over the meal, but his words are drowned out by the growing murmur of the crowd. The first bites are taken in silence, the villagers chewing slowly, their eyes darting between the couple and the meager spread before them. But the silence doesn't last. A gruff voice cuts through the air, Thomas's uncle again, his face flushed with ale despite the early hour. "This is all they offer?" he sneers, holding up a piece of flatbread that crumbles in his hand. "A cursed union, and now a cursed feast." The words are a spark to dry tinder, and the crowd erupts, their voices a cacophony of complaints and accusations. Agnes feels the sting of their words like a physical blow, her heart sinking with the regret of a dream shattered by scarcity. She's poured every ounce of her strength into this feast, her hands blistered from hours over the fire, her mind racing with the hope that this day might finally earn them the village's acceptance. But the villagers' hunger runs deeper than the food on the table. It's a hunger for power, for control, for a scapegoat to blame for their own hardships. Thomas's father rises to defend them, his voice a roar as he slams his fist on the table, but his words only fuel the fire. Agnes's brother, still smarting from the previous day's brawl, leaps to his feet, his eyes blazing with rage, and the square descends into chaos once more. Bowls are overturned, ale spills onto the snow, and the fire pit flares as a stray log is knocked into the flames, sending sparks flying like angry spirits. Amid the turmoil, the next ritual begins, the binding of the hands. This ceremony requires Thomas and Agnes to stand before the village, their hands bound together with a length of coarse rope, symbolizing their unbreakable bond. The rope, dyed red with madder root, is a vivid slash of color against the monochrome landscape, its fibers rough against their skin. Edith, the village elder, steps forward to perform the binding, her hands steady despite the chaos around her, her voice a low chant that carries an ancient weight. The villagers fall silent, their anger momentarily subdued by the gravity of the moment, but their eyes remain cold, their judgment unyielding. Thomas feels the rope tighten around his wrist, a physical reminder of the bonds that tie him to Agnes and to the village that seems determined to tear them apart. Agnes meets his gaze, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, her heart aching with the longing for a future where they can be free of the scrutiny. But the ritual takes a darker turn as Edith finishes the binding and steps back, her face pale with a sudden realization. "The rope, it frays," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the wind, and the crowd gasps as they see the strands unraveling, a jagged tear splitting the red fibers. In Eldermoor, a frayed rope is a dire omen, a sign that the couple's bond is doomed to break. The villagers surge forward, their voices rising in a chorus of fear and condemnation, their hands reaching for the couple as if to tear them apart then and there. Thomas pulls Agnes close, his body a barrier against the onslaught, his mind racing with the terror of what this omen might mean. The longing for acceptance, the ache of a love so fiercely tested, burns within him, a fire that refuses to be extinguished even as the village's wrath threatens to consume them. The day's chaos reaches its peak as the final ritual looms, the walk of the flame. This is a test of courage, where the couple must walk barefoot across a path of hot coals, a symbolic purging of the sins that might taint their union. The fire pit is prepared, its coals glowing red beneath a thin layer of ash, their heat radiating through the snow. Thomas and Agnes stand at the edge of the path, their hands still bound, their feet bare against the frozen ground. The villagers form a circle around them, their torches casting an eerie glow, their faces a mix of anticipation and malice. The priest mutters a prayer, his voice trembling, while Edith watches with a grim satisfaction, as if the coals will confirm her prophecy. Thomas takes the first step, his jaw clenched against the searing pain, his mind focused on Agnes's trembling form beside him. She follows, her steps faltering, her breath hitching as the coals burn her soles, each step a testament to the pain they've endured for this union.
As they reach the end of the path, their feet blistered and raw, the villagers remain silent, their judgment a heavy weight that presses down on the couple's shoulders. The snow continues to fall, blanketing the coals in a hiss of steam, and Thomas and Agnes collapse into each other's arms, their bodies shaking with exhaustion and relief. The day has tested them beyond measure, revealing the depths of the village's mistrust and the fragility of their place within it. But beneath the pain, there's a flicker of hope, a shared resolve to face whatever comes next, to prove that their love can withstand the chaos of Eldermoor. As night falls, the village retreats into its homes, leaving the couple alone in the square, the snow piling around them like a barrier against the world. What trials await them as the wedding's final days unfold? The answer waits in the stillness, whispering its secrets into the night. The snow lies thick and unbroken across the village of Eldermoor, a pristine veil that softens the edges of the wooden cottages and muffles the distant cries of the wind. Inside Thomas and Agnes's humble home, the hearth has gone cold, its ashes a gray testament to the nights of struggle they've endured. You're still here, cradled in the stillness of medieval Europe in 1325,
where the air hums with the unresolved tension of a wedding that has spiraled into chaos. Thomas leans against the wall, his blistered feet propped on a stool, his face etched with the exhaustion of a man who has walked through fire, literally and figuratively. Agnes sits beside him, her hands cradling her burned soles, her eyes fixed on the wooden cross as if it holds the key to their salvation. The village's rejection, the failed rituals, the searing pain of the coals, all of it lingers like a shadow, threatening to unravel the fragile bond they've forged. What hidden truths from the past could ignite this chaos further, turning their wedding into a crucible of survival? If you drift away now, you might miss the buried secrets that could seal their fate or offer them redemption. The 5th day of the wedding dawns with a fragile stillness, the sky a pale gray that promises no reprieve from the cold. Eldermoor stirs slowly, the villagers emerging from their homes with cloaks pulled tight, their breath fogging in the frigid air. Today is the day of reckoning, a ritual steeped in the shadows of the past, where the couple must confront the history of their families and prove their union is free of ancient curses. In a world where lineage is both pride and burden, this day holds the power to elevate Thomas and Agnes or cast them into eternal disgrace. Thomas rises with a groan, his body aching from the previous day's ordeal, his mind racing with the dread of what revelations might surface. Agnes joins him, her movements stiff as she wraps a scarf around her neck, the scars of their trials etched into her every step. Together they step into the snow, their breath mingling in the air, unaware that this day will unearth a past that could unite or destroy them. The village square, now a frozen expanse, becomes the stage for the ritual, its benches cleared to make way for a circle of stones, arranged in a pattern older than the church itself. The stones, moss-covered and weathered, are said to mark the site where the village's founders once appeased the forest spirits, a tradition that predates the Christian rites imposed by the priest. Edith, the village elder, stands at the center, her face a mask of solemnity, her hands clutching a leather-bound book filled with cryptic runes. The villagers gather around, their torches casting flickering shadows that dance across the snow, their eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and dread. Thomas and Agnes take their places within the circle, their hands still bound by the frayed red rope, its torn strands a silent accusation of their fragility. The priest hovers at the edge, his lips moving in a silent prayer, but his presence feels secondary to the ancient power that Edith commands. The ritual begins with Edith's voice, a low chant that rises and falls like the wind, her words a blend of Old English and forgotten tongues that send a shiver down Thomas's spine. She opens the book, its pages yellowed and brittle, and begins to recite the lineage of their families, a litany of names that stretches back generations. Each name is a thread in the tapestry of Eldermoor's history, and with each recitation, the air grows heavier, as if the past itself is pressing in. Thomas listens, his heart pounding as Edith speaks of his grandfather, a man exiled for stealing a neighbor's cow, a stain on the family's honor that lingers like a curse. Agnes's breath catches as her own lineage is revealed, her great aunt, accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake, her ashes scattered to the wind as a warning to others. The villagers murmur, their eyes narrowing, their fingers pointing, as the weight of these ancestral sins falls upon the couple. The fear of rejection surges within Thomas, a deep ache that gnaws at his soul, the longing for acceptance warring with the shame of a heritage he cannot escape. He glances at Agnes, her face pale, her eyes glistening with tears of regret for a past she didn't choose. The villagers' whispers grow louder, their accusations a chorus of condemnation. "Cursed blood breeds cursed unions," a woman cries. "The spirits will not forgive," a man adds with his fist raised. Edith raises a hand for silence,
her voice cutting through the din as she declares the next step, the trial of the ancestors, where Thomas and Agnes must offer a confession of their family's sins to appease the past. The couple kneels, their bound hands trembling, as Edith places a bowl of ash before them, its bitter scent filling the air. Thomas speaks first, his voice hoarse, confessing the theft that marked his grandfather's exile, his words a reluctant admission that feels like a betrayal of his own blood. Agnes follows, her voice breaking, as she acknowledges her great-aunt's fate, her heart aching with the regret of a lineage stained by fire and fear. The villagers watch in silence, their judgment a palpable force, but the ritual takes a turn as Edith scatters the ash into the wind, her face darkening. "The spirits are restless," she intones, and a sudden gust snatches the ash, swirling it into a cloud that blinds the crowd. Panic erupts, the villagers stumbling back, their torches flaring as they shout in terror. The ancestors reject them. The chaos is a mirror of their inner turmoil, the fear of damnation fueling a frenzy that threatens to overwhelm the couple. As the ash settles, the next phase begins, the burning of the past. This ritual requires the couple to cast symbols of their family's sins into a fire, a symbolic purging meant to cleanse their union. Thomas retrieves a rusty knife, a relic of his grandfather's theft, its blade dulled by time, and Agnes offers a charred wooden doll, a memento of her great-aunt's final days. They approach the fire pit, its flames leaping high against the snow, and cast their offerings into the blaze. The knife hisses as it melts, the doll crackles as it burns, and for a moment, the air is filled with the scent of scorched metal and wood. But the fire flares unexpectedly, sending a shower of sparks into the crowd, and a scream pierces the night as a villager's cloak catches flame. The square descends into pandemonium, the villagers beating at the fire with their hands, their cries a chaotic symphony of fear and rage.
Thomas pulls Agnes to safety, his heart pounding with the terror of what they've unleashed, the longing for a future untainted by the past burning within him. Agnes clings to him, her body trembling, her mind flooded with the regret of a heritage that haunts her every step. The priest rushes forward, his voice a frantic prayer, while Edith watches with a grim resolve, as if the fire confirms her warnings. The flames are extinguished, leaving the square in a haze of smoke and silence, the villagers' eyes fixed on the couple with a mix of awe and accusation. The ritual has failed, the past refusing to be purged, and the weight of this failure presses down on Thomas and Agnes like a yoke they cannot shed. As night falls, the villagers retreat, their torches fading into the distance, leaving the couple alone in the snow-dusted square. The fire pit smolders, a faint glow against the darkness, and Thomas and Agnes sit beside it, their bound hands resting on the cold ground. The chaos of the day has revealed the depth of their family's sins, the village's mistrust, and the unseen forces that threaten to tear them apart. Yet in the quiet, there's a flicker of hope, a shared resolve to face the trials ahead, to forge a future from the ashes of the past. What revelations will the next day bring, as the wedding's final rites draw near? The answer waits in the silence, whispering its secrets into the night. The smoldering embers of the fire pit cast a faint, ghostly light across the snow-covered square of Eldermoor, their glow a fragile beacon in the deepening night. Inside their cottage, Thomas and Agnes huddle close, the cold seeping through the cracked walls as the silence of the village wraps around them like a shroud. You're still journeying with them, cradled in the heart of medieval Europe in 1325, where the wedding that began with hope has unraveled into a tapestry of chaos and despair. Thomas rests his head against the wall, his blistered feet throbbing, his mind a whirlwind of fear and determination as he grips Agnes's hand. Agnes, her face pale in the dim light, traces the frayed red rope that still binds them, her heart heavy with the weight of the village's rejection and the sins of their ancestors laid bare. The howl of the forest, the flare of the fire, the accusing eyes of Eldermoor, all of it lingers, a shadow that threatens to swallow their union whole.
What dark secrets could the forest hold, ready to test their resolve on this 6th day of their wedding? If you turn away now, you might never witness the moment that could save them or doom them forever. The 6th day breaks with a stillness so profound it feels like the world is holding its breath. The snow lying thick and undisturbed across the village. The sky is a leaden gray, heavy with the promise of more cold, and the air carries a faint, eerie whisper that seems to rise from the forest's edge. Today is the day of the forest, a ritual born of the village's ancient pact with the spirits that dwell beyond the trees, a day when Thomas and Agnes must venture into the wild to seek forgiveness for the omens that have plagued their wedding. In Eldermoor, the forest is both a provider and a predator, its depths a realm of mystery where the line between life and death blurs. Thomas rises with a weary sigh, his body protesting every movement, his heart pounding with the dread of what lies ahead. Agnes stands beside him, her scarf pulled tight against the chill, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and a quiet, unyielding hope. Together, they step into the snow, their footsteps crunching softly, unaware that this day will bring them face to face with the unseen forces that have haunted their union. The village gathers at the forest's edge, their torches held high against the gloom, their faces a mix of anticipation and unease. The trees loom like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches heavy with snow, their shadows stretching across the ground like dark fingers. Edith leads the procession, her leather-bound book clutched to her chest, her voice a low chant that weaves through the air like a thread of fate. The priest follows, his robe flapping in the wind, his muttered prayers a faint counterpoint to the elder's ancient words. Thomas and Agnes walk at the center, their bound hands a visible sign of their vulnerability, their steps hesitant as they approach the forest's threshold. The villagers form a semicircle behind them, their eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and malice, ready to interpret every sign as proof of the couple's worth or their doom. The ritual begins with Edith's command to enter the forest, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. You must offer yourselves to the spirits and prove your union is worthy of their blessing. Thomas and Agnes step forward, the snow giving way to a carpet of pine needles and frozen leaves, the air growing thick with the scent of damp earth and resin. The villagers watch from the edge, their torches casting a flickering glow that barely penetrates the darkness ahead. The couple is to walk to the heart of the forest, a clearing marked by an ancient stone altar, and leave an offering, a wreath of evergreen branches and a vial of their blood, drawn with a small knife provided by Edith. The task is fraught with danger, for the forest is said to harbor spirits that punish the unworthy, their wrath manifesting in howls and shadows that can drive a man mad. As they venture deeper, the sounds of the village fade, replaced by the rustle of branches and the distant drip of melting snow. Thomas grips the knife, its cold steel biting into his palm, his mind racing with the fear of what might lurk beyond the next tree. Agnes walks beside him, her breath shallow, her heart aching with the longing to prove their love against the odds stacked against them. The forest closes in, its canopy a thick roof that blocks the sky, its shadow shifting with every step. Suddenly, a low growl echoes through the trees, a sound so primal that it freezes them in their tracks. Thomas's hand tightens on Agnes's, his body tensing as he scans the darkness, the terror of the unknown gripping his soul. Agnes presses closer, her eyes wide with fear, her mind flooded with the regret of bringing this curse upon them, the fear of losing everything they fought for. They reach the clearing, a small patch of ground encircled by towering oaks, the stone altar at its center covered in moss and etched with faded runes. The air feels charged, heavy with an unseen presence, and Thomas's hands tremble as he weaves the wreath, his fingers clumsy with cold and dread. Agnes takes the knife, her breath hitching as she draws a thin line across her palm, the blood welling bright against her pale skin. She hands it to Thomas, who mirrors her act, their blood mingling as they pour it into the vial, a crimson offering to the spirits. They place the wreath and vial on the altar, their voices joining in a whispered plea for forgiveness, their words lost in the rustling leaves.
For a moment, all is still, the forest holding its breath as if it weighing their worth. But the silence shatters with a sudden roar, the ground trembling beneath their feet as a shadow emerges from the trees, a massive stag, its antlers crowned with frost, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The villagers gasp from the edge, their torches flaring as they shout warnings, but Thomas and Agnes stand rooted, their hearts pounding with a mix of awe and terror. The stag approaches, its hooves silent on the snow, and it lowers its head to the altar, its breath a warm mist that envelops the offerings. Edith's voice rises in a triumphant chant, interpreting the stag's presence as a sign of the spirit's acceptance. But the villagers' relief is short-lived. The stag turns, its eyes locking with Thomas's, and with a sudden leap, it vanishes into the forest, leaving behind a silence so profound it feels like a judgment. The return to the village is a tense procession. The villagers' murmurs a constant undercurrent of suspicion. Edith declares the ritual a partial success, the stag's appearance a rare blessing, but the torn rope and the forest's unrest cast doubt on the couple's fate. Thomas and Agnes walk hand in hand, their blistered palms a testament to their sacrifice, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and relief. The longing for acceptance, the ache of a love tested by the wild burns within them, a fire that refuses to die even as the village's mistrust threatens to consume it. As night falls, Thomas and Agnes sit by the cold heath, their bound hands resting on the floor, the weight of the day's events pressing down like a yoke. What revelations will the next day bring as the wedding's final rites draw near? The answer waits in the darkness, whispering its secrets into the night. The darkness of the night wraps around Eldermoor like a heavy cloak, the snow continuing its silent descent, blanketing the village in a stillness that feels both sacred and foreboding. Inside Thomas and Agnes's cottage, a single tallow candle flickers on the rough-hewn table, its weak light casting trembling shadows across the walls. You're still here, nestled in the heart of medieval Europe in 1325, where the wedding that began with hope has unraveled into a tapestry of chaos and despair. Thomas rests his head against the wall, his blistered feet throbbing, his mind a whirlwind of fear and determination as he grips Agnes's hand. Agnes, her face pale in the dim light, traces the frayed red rope that still binds them, her heart heavy with the weight of the village's rejection and the sins of their ancestors laid bare. The howl of the forest, the flare of the fire, the accusing eyes of Eldermoor, all of it lingers, a shadow that threatens to swallow their union whole. What dark secrets could the forest hold, ready to test their resolve on this 6th day of their wedding? If you turn away now, you might never witness the moment that could save them or doom them forever.
The 7th day dawns with a biting chill, the snow now a thick, unbroken layer that muffles the village's usual sounds, creating an eerie quiet that sets the stage for the day's ritual. Today is the Day of Truth, a tradition where the couple must face the village in a public reckoning, confessing any secrets that might taint their union, and seeking forgiveness from both the community and the divine. In a world where trust is as scarce as a bountiful harvest, this ritual is a double-edged sword, a chance for redemption, but also an opportunity for betrayal to surface. Thomas rises with a heavy heart, his body protesting every movement, his mind clouded with the dread of what truths might be revealed. Agnes stands beside him, her hands trembling as she adjusts her patched dress, the bloodstains on her palm a stark reminder of the sacrifices they've made. Together they step into the cold, their footsteps muffled in the snow, unaware that this day will expose the raw underbelly of Eldermoor's mistrust. The village square, now a frozen arena, is prepared for the ritual, its center cleared to form a circle of packed snow, surrounded by the villagers who stand like silent judges, their cloaks dusted with frost. A wooden platform, hastily constructed from old planks, stands at the circle's heart, its surface scarred and uneven, a fitting stage for the day's reckoning. The priest takes his place beside the platform, his gaunt frame shivering in his threadbare robe, his voice a low murmur as he clutches a worn Bible. Edith, the village elder, stands opposite him, her leather-bound book of runes tucked under her arm,
her eyes sharp, with a knowing that sends a shiver down Thomas's spine. The villagers gather around, their torches casting a dim glow against the gray dawn, their faces a mix of curiosity and malice, ready to unearth any fault that might justify their rejection of the couple. Thomas and Agnes climb onto the platform, their bound hands trembling as they face the crowd, their hearts pounding with the fear of what secrets might surface. The ritual begins with the priest's prayer, his Latin words a solemn drone that hangs heavy in the air, followed by Edith's chant, a rhythmic invocation that calls upon the spirits to bear witness to the truth. The couple is expected to confess any hidden sins, debts unpaid, promises broken, or betrayals committed, before the village offers its judgment. Thomas speaks first, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest, confessing a small debt he owes to a neighboring farmer, a debt he took on to buy seed for the spring planting. The villagers murmur, their disapproval a low hum, but the confession is minor, and their judgment softens slightly, a flicker of hope in the cold air. Agnes steps forward, her voice soft but firm, her confession a whispered admission of a promise she broke to her sister, a vow to share a portion of her dowry that she kept for herself out of fear of scarcity. The crowd's reaction is sharper, their whispers turning to mutters of disdain. "Selfish girl," a woman hisses, her voice cutting through the silence. But the real storm brews beneath the surface, a betrayal that neither Thomas nor Agnes could have foreseen. As the confessions conclude, Edith calls for the village to speak, a tradition that allows any member of the community to reveal secrets about the couple. The air grows tense, the villagers shifting uneasily, their eyes darting between one another, as if waiting for someone to break the silence. It's Thomas's uncle who steps forward, his face flushed with ale and malice, his voice a growl as he points an accusing finger at Agnes's family. "Her brother, he's a thief," he roars, his words a thunderclap that shatters the fragile peace. "He stole my best sow last spring, and they've hidden it all this time." The crowd erupts, their voices a cacophony of shock and rage, their fingers pointing at Agnes's brother, who stands frozen, his face pale with guilt. Agnes's mother lets out a wail, her hands flying to her face, her body trembling with the shame of a secret exposed. Thomas feels the ground shift beneath him, his heart sinking with the fear of what this accusation means for their union, the longing for acceptance, the ache of a love so fiercely tested, slipping further out of reach. The chaos escalates as Agnes's brother lunges at Thomas's uncle, his fists flying in a desperate attempt to silence the truth, but the villagers intervene, pulling them apart as the square descends into a frenzy. Torches flare, snow is kicked into the air, and the platform creaks under the weight of the crowd's fury. Thomas pulls Agnes close, his body a shield against the storm, his mind racing with the terror of what this betrayal might cost them. The longing for acceptance, the ache of a love so fiercely tested, burns within him, a fire that refuses to die, even as the village's wrath threatens to consume them. Agnes buries her face in his chest, her tears soaking into his tunic, her heart breaking with the regret of a family torn apart by its own sins. Edith raises her hands for silence, her voice cutting through the din like a blade, her eyes blazing with a mix of sorrow and resolve. "The spirits demand justice," she declares, and the villagers fall silent, their anger simmering as they await her verdict. The ritual takes a darker turn as Edith announces the trial of the betrayer, a custom where the accused, Agnes's brother, must face a test to prove his innocence. The test is simple but brutal. He must hold a red-hot iron bar for 10 paces, its searing heat a judgment of his guilt or innocence. The villagers prepare the fire pit, its flames leaping high as they heat the iron, its glow a menacing red against the snow. The young man, with his hands blistered and raw, steps forward, his hands trembling as he takes the bar, the sizzle of his flesh a sickening sound that echoes through the square. The crowd watches in silence, their breaths fogging in the air, their eyes fixed on the young man as he stumbles forward, each step a testament to the pain of his betrayal. He collapses at the 9th pace, the iron falling to the snow with a hiss, his hands blistered and raw, his cries a raw plea for mercy. Edith examines his burns, her face grim, and declares him guilty, her verdict a death knell that sends Agnes's mother into a sobbing heap. The villagers turn their gaze to Thomas and Agnes, their judgment now tainted by the brother's sin, their whispers a chorus of condemnation. The family is cursed. The fear of exile, the regret of a love overshadowed by betrayal, press down on the couple, a weight they can barely bear. As night falls, the villagers disperse, their torches fading into the darkness, leaving the square in a hush broken only by the soft fall of snow. Thomas and Agnes return to their cottage, their bound hands heavy with the day's revelations, their hearts aching with the pain of a village unraveled by mistrust. The betrayal has deepened the chaos of their wedding, revealing the fragility of their place in Eldermoor and the cost of their union. But in the flicker of the candle's dying light, there's a glimmer of resolve, a shared determination to face the trials ahead, to forge a future from the ashes of betrayal. What will the next day bring, as the wedding's final rites draw near? The answer waits in the stillness, whispering its secrets into the night. The candle's flame gutters in the stillness of the night, its light a fragile thread against the encroaching darkness that fills Thomas and Agnes's cottage in Eldermoor. The snow outside has piled high, pressing against the windows like a silent witness to the chaos that has consumed their wedding. You're still here, wrapped in the quiet heart of medieval Europe in 1325, where the air hums with the aftermath of betrayal and the weight of a village's unforgiving gaze. Thomas sits with his head bowed, his blistered hands resting on his thighs, his eyes reflecting the flicker of the dying flame as he wrestles with the fear of what the next day might bring. Agnes kneels beside him, her fingers tracing the torn red rope that has bound them through every hardship, her face etched with the exhaustion of a heart battered by judgment and betrayal. The fiery corridor, the cast stones, the village's divided verdict, all of it lingers like a storm waiting to break. What final act of courage could turn this chaos into a triumph, sealing their union against all odds? If you drift away now, you might miss the moment that decides whether their love endures or crumbles beneath the storm. The 8th day dawns with a cold, piercing light that cuts through the snow-laden sky, casting long shadows across the village square. The snow has hardened into a glistening crust, crunching underfoot as the villagers emerge from their homes, their faces set with a grim determination. Today is the day of judgment, the penultimate ritual of Thomas and Agnes's wedding, a day when the village will deliver its verdict on their union, deciding whether they are worthy to remain in Eldermoor or must face exile. In a world where survival depends on community, this ritual is a life or death trial, a moment where every sin, every misstep is weighed against the couple's fragile bond. Thomas rises with a heavy sigh, his body aching from days of ordeal, his mind clouded with the dread of what lies ahead. Agnes stands beside him, her patched dress dusted with snow, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and a quiet, unyielding resolve. Together they step into the cold, their footsteps steady despite the tremor in their hearts, unaware that this day will test them in ways they never imagined. The village square, now a frozen amphitheater, is prepared for the ritual, its circle of stones surrounded by a crowd of villagers, bundled in cloaks, their torches held high against the gray dawn. A raised platform, reinforced with new planks, stands at the center, its surface slick with ice, a stark stage for the day's reckoning. The priest takes his place beside the platform, his gaunt frame drawn with fatigue, his Bible clutched tightly as he mutters a prayer for guidance. Edith, the village elder, stands opposite him, her leather-bound book of runes open in her hands, her eyes sharp with the weight of her role as arbiter. The villagers gather around, their breaths fogging in the air, their faces a mix of anticipation and malice, ready to deliver a verdict that will shape the couple's future. Thomas and Agnes climb onto the platform, their bound hands trembling as they face the crowd, their hearts pounding with the fear of what this judgment might bring. The ritual begins with the priest's invocation, his Latin words a solemn chant that echoes across the square, followed by Edith's recitation of the wedding's omens, the frayed rope, the forest's howl, the burning of the past, the brothers' betrayal. Each event is a thread in the tapestry of their trial, and with each recitation the air grows heavier, as if the village's collective will is pressing in. The couple is given a chance to plead their case, to offer a defense against the accusations that have mounted over the days,
Thomas steps forward, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest, speaking of their sacrifices, the blood offering, the walk through fire, the confessions that bared their souls. Agnes joins him, her voice soft but firm, pleading for the village's mercy, her words a testament to the love that has sustained them through this chaos. But the villagers' response is a wave of murmurs, their judgment a low rumble that builds into a chorus of dissent. Thomas's uncle rises, his face flushed with ale and resentment, his voice a growl as he recounts the theft of his sow, amplifying the brother's guilt into a stain on the entire family. "They bring ruin upon us," he shouts, his fist raised, and the crowd roars in agreement, their torches flaring as they surge forward. Agnes's mother collapses to her knees, her sobs a raw plea for forgiveness, while her brother, still nursing his burned hands, stands silent, his head bowed in shame. Thomas feels the ground shift beneath him, his heart sinking with the fear of exile, the longing for a home and a future, slipping through his fingers like sand. Agnes clings to him, her tears freezing on her cheeks, her mind flooded with the regret of a family's downfall and the terror of being cast out into the wilderness. The chaos escalates as Edith raises her hands for silence, her voice cutting through the din like a clarion call, her eyes blazing with a mix of authority and sorrow. "The spirits demand a final test," she declares, and the villagers fall silent, their anger simmering as they await her command. The ritual takes a dramatic turn with the trial of the flame, a variation of the previous day's walk, but this time the couple must pass through a wall of fire created by the villagers' torches. The fire pit is stoked, its flames leaping high as the villagers form two lines, their torches held aloft to create a blazing corridor. Thomas and Agnes stand at the edge, their bound hands trembling, their feet bare against the icy ground, the heat from the flames a stark contrast to the cold that grips their bodies. The priest mutters a prayer, his voice trembling, while Edith watches with a grim resolve, as if the fire will reveal the truth of their worth. Thomas takes the first step, his jaw clenched against the searing heat, his mind focused on Agnes's trembling form beside him. She follows, her steps faltering, her breath hitching as the flames lick at her dress, each movement a testament to the pain they've endured for this union. The villagers watch in silence, their breaths held, their eyes fixed on the couple as they navigate the fiery path. The heat is unbearable, the smoke choking, but they press on, their hands clasped tightly, their love a lifeline in the inferno. As they emerge on the other side, their clothes singed and their skin blistered, the crowd gasps, their judgment wavering in the face of such endurance. Edith steps forward, her face softening, and declares the trial a sign of the spirit's reluctant approval. But the villagers' murmurs persist, their mistrust a lingering shadow. The day's climax comes with the verdict of the circle, where the villagers cast stones into a marked area to vote on the couple's fate, black stones for exile, white stones for acceptance. The square grows quiet as the villagers approach, their hands hidden in their cloaks, their faces unreadable. Thomas and Agnes stand on the platform, their hearts pounding, their bodies trembling with the weight of the moment. The stones are cast, clattering into the snow, and Edith counts them, her expression unreadable. The tally is close, too close, leaving the village divided, the black and white stones nearly equal, a testament to the fractured trust that defines Eldermoor. Edith announces a reprieve, a chance for the couple to prove themselves in the final day, but the verdict hangs over them like a guillotine, the fear of banishment a constant threat. As night falls, the villagers retreat, their torches fading into the darkness, leaving the square in a hush broken only by the soft fall of snow. Thomas and Agnes return to their cottage, their bound hands heavy with the day's trials, their hearts aching with the pain of a judgment unresolved. The chaos of the wedding has revealed the village's division, the depth of their mistrust, and the couple's fragile resilience. But in the flicker of the candle's dying light, there's a glimmer of hope, a shared resolve to face the final day, to forge a future from the ashes of judgment. What will the morrow bring as the wedding reaches its conclusion? The answer waits in the stillness, whispering its secrets into the night. The candle's flame has dwindled to a mere flicker, its light a fragile dance against the encroaching shadows that fill Thomas and Agnes's cottage in Eldermoor. The snow outside lies deep, a silent sentinel that guards the village in the quiet hours before dawn, its surface unbroken, save for the faint impressions of the day's trials. You're still here, cradled in the heart of medieval Europe in 1325, where the air vibrates with the unresolved tension of a wedding teetering on the edge of ruin. Thomas sits with his head resting against the wall, his blistered hands cradling a mug of cold ale, his eyes reflecting the faint glow as he grapples with the fear of exile and the faint hope of redemption. Agnes kneels beside him, her fingers tracing the torn red rope that binds them, her face etched with the exhaustion of a heart battered by judgment and betrayal. The fiery corridor, the cast stones, the village's divided verdict, all of it lingers like a storm waiting to break. What final act of courage could turn this chaos into a triumph, sealing their union against all odds? If you drift away now, you might miss the dawn that could change their destiny forever. The ninth day breaks with a tentative light, the sky a soft pink that pierces the gray clouds, casting a fragile warmth across the snow-laden village. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the faint promise of spring, a whisper of hope amid the cold. Today is the day of redemption, the final ritual of Thomas and Agnes's wedding, a day when they must prove their worth to Eldermoor and secure their place within its fragile community. In a world where survival hinges on unity, this ritual is their last chance to turn the tide of judgment, to forge a bond that can withstand the village's mistrust and the spirit's wrath. Thomas rises with a deep breath, his body stiff from days of ordeal, his mind clear with a resolve born of desperation. Agnes stands beside him, her patched dress dusted with snow, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and a fierce determination to see this through. Together they step into the dawn, their footsteps crunching in the snow, unaware that this day will demand everything they have left. The village square, now a hallowed ground of ice and stone, is prepared for the ritual, its circle of stones glowing faintly with the reflection of the rising sun. The platform stands at the center, its surface cleared of ice, a stark stage for the day's climax. The priest takes his place beside the platform, his gaunt face softened by a rare smile, his Bible held open as if to offer a blessing. Edith, the village elder, stands opposite him, her leather-bound book of runes resting in her lap, her eyes warm with a hint of anticipation. The villagers gather around, their cloaks pulled tight, their torches extinguished to let the dawn's light guide the proceedings, their faces a mix of hope and lingering doubt, ready to witness the couple's final stand. Thomas and Agnes climb onto the platform, their bound hands steady despite the tremor in their hearts, their bodies upright with the weight of their journey. The ritual begins with the priest's prayer, his Latin words a gentle hymn that rises with the morning breeze, followed by Edith's chant, a melodic invocation that calls upon the spirits to witness their redemption. The couple is tasked with a dual trial, the vow of unity and the offering of the heart, two acts that will test their love and their willingness to sacrifice for each other. Thomas speaks first, his voice clear and strong, vowing to stand by Agnes through every hardship, his words a pledge born of the trials they've endured. Agnes follows, her voice soft but resolute, promising to support Thomas with all her strength, her words a testament to the bond that has sustained them through this chaos. The wedding requires them to walk hand in hand through a circle of villagers, their bound hands raised as a symbol of their commitment. The villagers form a tight ring, their eyes fixed on the couple, their hands clasped to create a human chain that tests the strength of their acceptance. Thomas and Agnes step forward, their movements synchronized, their hands held high as they navigate the circle. The villagers' gazes are intense, their breaths held, their judgment a palpable force. A woman reaches out, her fingers brush Agnes's arm in a tentative gesture of support, and a man nods at Thomas, his stern face softening. The circle parts as they complete the walk, a ripple of approval spreading through the crowd, but the trial is not yet over. The offering of the heart looms ahead. This final act demands a personal sacrifice, a token of their love to be offered to the spirits and the village. Thomas retrieves a small wooden carving, a figure of a stag he crafted in secret during the long night
Of their ordeal, its antlers rough but lovingly shaped, a symbol of the forest's blessing. Agnes offers a lock of her hair, tied with a thread from her mother's shawl, a piece of her heritage given freely despite the family's shame. They approach a small fire pit prepared at the platform's edge, its flames gentle against the snow, and cast their offerings into the blaze. The carving crackles as it burns, the hair curls into ash, and the air fills with the scent of wood smoke and a faint sweetness that seems to carry a blessing. The villagers watch in silence, their breaths fogging in the air, their eyes softening as the fire consumes the tokens. But the ritual takes a dramatic turn as the flames flare unexpectedly, sending a shower of sparks into the sky that form a fleeting shape, a stag's silhouette against the dawn. The crowd gasps, their voices rising in a mix of awe and wonder, and Edith steps forward, her face alight with a rare smile. "The spirits accept them," she declares, her voice ringing with triumph, and the villagers erupt into a tentative cheer, their doubt giving way to a fragile acceptance. Thomas and Agnes stand hand in hand, their bodies trembling with relief, their hearts swelling with the longing for a future finally within reach. The fear of exile fades, replaced by a quiet joy, but the village's approval is still uncertain, its trust a thread that could snap at any moment. The day's climax comes with the blessing of the community, where the villagers offer a collective gesture of goodwill to seal the couple's place among them. The priest steps forward, sprinkling holy water over Thomas and Agnes, his words a gentle benediction that washes away the stain of past sins. Edith follows, scattering salt and herbs around them, her chant a soft lullaby that invites the spirit's protection. The villagers approach one by one, each offering a small gift, a handful of grain, a sprig of rosemary, a nod of acknowledgement, symbols of their reluctant but growing acceptance. Thomas feels the weight lift from his shoulders, the ache of rejection replaced by a tentative sense of belonging. Agnes smiles through her tears, her heart filled with the hope of a home restored, her regret giving way to a fierce pride in their survival. The sun climbs higher, casting a warm glow across the square. The villagers disperse, their steps lighter, their faces softened by the dawn's promise. Thomas and Agnes remain on the platform, their bound hands resting on the wood, their bodies warmed by the community's tentative embrace. The chaos of the wedding has revealed their resilience, the village's capacity for forgiveness, and the power of a love forged in fire. But the final day awaits, a moment to solidify their union or see it tested once more. As they return to their cottage, the snow begins to melt under the sun's rays, a sign of renewal that mirrors their hope. What will the morrow bring? As the wedding reaches its conclusion, the answer waits in the light, whispering its secrets into the day. The sun's gentle warmth lingers in the air as it dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson that reflect off the melting snow in Eldermoor. Inside Thomas and Agnes's cottage, a small fire crackles in the hearth, its light casting a soft glow across the rough wooden walls, a beacon of hope after days of unrelenting chaos. You're still here, cradled in the heart of medieval Europe in 1325, where the echoes of a wedding once fraught with turmoil now hum with the quiet promise of renewal. Thomas sits by the fire, his blistered hands resting on his knees, his face softened by a rare smile as he looks at Agnes, the weight of their trials lifting like a morning mist. Agnes kneels beside him, her fingers gently untying the frayed red rope that has bound them through every hardship, her eyes bright with a joy tempered by the scars of their journey. The village's tentative acceptance, the stag's silhouette in the flames, the small gifts of grain and rosemary, all of it lingers like a melody, a testament to their resilience. What final act could seal their union, turning this chaotic wedding into a legacy of love? If you drift away now, you might miss the moment that binds their hearts for eternity. The 10th day dawns with a clarity that feels almost sacred, the sky a brilliant blue that stretches over the village like a protective canopy, the snow melting into rivulets that glisten in the morning light. The air carries the scent of damp earth and budding green, a whisper of spring that promises new beginnings. Today is the day of binding, the final ritual of Thomas and Agnes's wedding, a day when their union will be sealed not just by the village, but by the divine and the spirits they've fought so hard to appease. In a world where every bond is tested by hardship, this ritual is a celebration of endurance, a moment to solidify their place in Eldermoor and mark the start of their life together. Thomas rises with a renewed strength, his body still bearing the marks of their trials, but his spirit buoyed by the hope of a future finally within reach. Agnes stands beside him, her patched dress replaced by a simple linen gown gifted by a neighbor, her hair adorned with a sprig of rosemary, her eyes reflecting a quiet triumph. Together they step into the light, their footsteps steady, their hearts beating as one, ready to face the day that will define their legacy.
The village square, now a place of renewal rather than judgment, is transformed for the ritual. Its circle of stones decorated with evergreen boughs and early wildflowers, their colors vibrant against the melting snow. A small altar stands at the center, draped in a cloth of undyed wool, its surface adorned with a wooden chalice and a loaf of bread baked by the village women as a communal gift. The priest takes his place beside the altar, his gaunt face alight with a rare warmth, his Bible open to a passage of blessing. Edith, the village elder, stands opposite him, her leather-bound book of runes set aside, her hands clasped in a gesture of peace, her eyes soft with pride. The villagers gather around, their cloaks replaced by lighter shawls, their faces a mix of joy and lingering caution, ready to witness the culmination of the couple's journey. Thomas and Agnes approach the altar, their hands unbound for the first time in days, their movements free but deliberate as they take their places before the village. The ritual begins with the priest's blessing, his Latin words a gentle hymn that rises with the morning breeze, followed by Edith's chant, a melodic invocation that calls upon the spirits to sanctify their union. The couple is tasked with the final binding, a ceremony where they will exchange new vows and seal them with a shared act of devotion. Thomas speaks first, his voice clear and strong, vowing to protect Agnes with his life, to till the fields by her side, and to build a home where their love can flourish. Agnes follows, her voice soft but resolute, promising to nurture their family, to weave a future from the threads of their past, and to stand by Thomas through every storm. Their words are a tapestry of hope, woven from the trials they've endured, a testament to a love that has survived the chaos of Eldermoor. The final binding continues with the union of the elements, a ritual that symbolizes their harmony with the natural world. The priest hands them the wooden chalice, filled with water from the village well, and they drink together, their lips touching the same rim, the cool liquid a shared promise of purity. Then Edith offers the loaf of bread baked with the first grain of the season, and they break it together, feeding each other small pieces, the act a symbol of sustenance and unity. The villagers watch in silence, their breaths held, their eyes softening as the couple completes the ritual, their hands steady despite the weight of the moment. A ripple of approval spreads through the crowd, a quiet murmur of acceptance that grows into a gentle cheer, a sound that feels like a balm after days of discord. The ritual reaches its climax with the blessing of the earth, where Thomas and Agnes must plant a seed together, a literal and metaphorical act of growth that will mark the start of their shared legacy. Edith leads them to a small patch of cleared ground at the square's edge, its soil softened by the melting snow, its surface prepared with a circle of stones. The villagers form a semicircle around them, their hands clasped, their faces alight with a tentative hope. Thomas kneels, his hands digging into the earth, the soil cold but yielding beneath his fingers, while Agnes places a single barley seed into the hole, her touch gentle, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. They cover the seed together, their hands working as one, the act a quiet prayer for a future that will bloom despite the hardships of the past. The villagers step forward, each tossing a handful of earth into the circle, their contributions a communal blessing that seals the couple's place among them.
As the sun climbs higher, bathing the square in a golden glow, the villagers erupt into a true celebration, their voices rising in song, their hands clapping in rhythm as they dance around the newly planted seed. The priest offers a final prayer, his words a gentle benediction that washes away the last traces of doubt, while Edith scatters herbs around the circle, her chant a soft lullaby that invites the spirit's protection. Thomas and Agnes stand at the center, their hands clasped, their bodies warmed by the community's embrace, their hearts swelling with the joy they thought they'd never know. The longing for acceptance, the ache of a love so fiercely tested, has given way to a quiet triumph, a legacy forged in the fire of their trials. The day fades into evening, the villagers lingering in the square, their laughter a melody that echoes through the village, a stark contrast to the chaos that once defined this wedding. Thomas and Agnes return to their cottage, their hands still clasped, their bodies warmed by the memory of the day's light. The fire in the hearth burns brightly now, its flames a mirror of their renewed hope, and as they sit together, they speak of the future, of fields to sow, of children to raise, of a life built on the foundation of their love. The chaos of the wedding has revealed their strength, the village's capacity for forgiveness, and the power of a bond that nothing could break. As the stars rise over Eldermoor, their light a silent witness to the couple's triumph, the story of their wedding becomes a legend, a tale of love, chaos, and redemption that will echo through the generations. And with that, their journey finds its end, whispering its secrets into the night.